Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. So today we're diving into something a little different.
Okay.
We're going to be tackling a piece that lays out 7 things
Hmm.
that we should supposedly never reveal
Okay.
if we want a happier,
Right.
more successful life.
Interesting.
I know that sounds a bit dramatic,
Yeah, a little bit.
right? But stick with us because even if you don't buy into every single point,
Yeah.
I think there are some surprisingly insightful nuggets here worth exploring.
I think that's true.
So think of this deep dive not as a set of strict rules, but more as like a thought-provoking framework for
Okay.
thinking about the power of discretion.
I like that.
What are your initial thoughts on this? Have you ever felt like some things are better left unsaid?
Well, it's funny because this concept of strategic silence,
Mm-hmm.
it pops up across different cultures and time periods.
Yeah.
It's like there's this intuitive understanding that not everything needs to be voiced,
Mm-hmm.
that holding back can sometimes be more powerful than letting it all out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So share your experiences in the comments below.
Yeah.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button while you're at it.
Absolutely.
We love hearing from you.
Yeah.
So the first secret the source dives into
Okay.
is this idea of unspoken dreams.
All right.
It suggests that prematurely sharing your aspirations could actually sabotage your progress.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
almost like letting the air out of a balloon before it's even had a chance to fly.
Right?
Yeah, you build up all this anticipation,
Yeah.
but then by sharing it too soon, you diffuse that energy before it can really propel you forward.
That's a great analogy. And there's actually some psychological research that backs this up.
Oh, wow.
Studies on goal setting have shown that publicly announcing your intentions can sometimes create a premature sense of accomplishment,
Oh,
almost as if you've already achieved the goal just by talking about it.
I see.
So it's about protecting that focused energy,
Yeah.
keeping it internalized,
Yeah,
where it can fuel your actions instead of getting diluted by external opinions or expectations.
precisely. It's like that saying, work in silence, let your success be your noise.
Oh, I like that.
Sometimes the most powerful changes happen below the surface, quietly and steadily, until one day they emerge into the world fully formed.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's not about being secretive or deceptive, but rather about
Yeah.
creating a protected space for your dreams to take root and grow.
I agree.
What about you? What's one dream or goal
Ooh.
you're currently keeping close to the vest? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear what you're working on.
The next secret the source tackles is the concept of quiet good deeds.
Okay.
The idea here is that boasting about your generosity diminishes its value.
Yeah, it's like that classic line, true charity is done in secret.
Right.
There's something inherently pure about acts of kindness
Yeah.
done without any expectation of recognition or reward.
Exactly. When we boast about our generosity,
Yeah.
it shifts the focus from the act itself to how it makes us look.
It becomes more about seeking validation or
Yeah.
praise
Right.
rather than genuinely wanting to help.
So it's about the intention behind the action.
Yeah.
True generosity comes from a place of genuine care and compassion, not a desire to impress others or boost our own egos.
Precisely. Think about a time when someone did something genuinely kind for you without any fanfare
Yeah.
or expectation of something in return.
Right.
Didn't that act have a much deeper impact?
Oh, yeah.
Because it felt so pure and heartfelt.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about someone's character when they give without needing to broadcast it to the world.
I agree.
It makes you wonder how many quiet acts of kindness happen every day that go unnoticed but make a real difference in people's lives.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
Now the source gets a bit more personal with the next point,
Right.
advising us to keep home sweet and private home.
Ah, yes, the age-old adage, don't air your dirty laundry in public.
Right.
Family dynamics can be incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And while it's tempting to seek outside perspectives when conflicts arise,
There's also a danger in oversharing those internal struggles.
it's about respecting the sanctity of those relationships.
Yeah.
Recognizing that family matters are often best handled within the family unit itself.
Yeah.
When we involve outsiders, it can create unwanted judgments, unsolicited advice,
Right.
and even fuel gossip that can further damage those delicate bonds.
It's like inviting a stranger into the middle of a private conversation.
Right.
They might not fully understand the context, the history, the
Yes.
nuances of those relationships.
Yeah.
Their input, while well-intentioned, could actually exacerbate the situation rather than help.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best support comes from those who are closest to us,
Right.
those who know us best and who are invested in preserving the integrity of the family unit.
Exactly.
Have you ever experienced someone trying to insert themselves into your family dynamics?
Ooh, good question.
We'd love to hear your experiences. Share in the comments.
Next up, the source delves into a topic that can be a bit of a minefield. Money matters quietly is the advice here.
Oh yeah, finances.
Yeah.
Finances can be a tricky subject to navigate in conversations.
Right.
There's always a risk of evoking envy, judgment, or even attracting unwanted attention.
It's like that saying, don't talk about your riches in front of the needy.
Right.
It can create unnecessary tension and comparison.
Yeah.
Plus, there's always the potential for attracting the wrong kind of attention if people perceive you as having more than you need.
Exactly. And on the flip side, constantly complaining about financial struggles can also put a strain on relationships.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It can make people feel uncomfortable or obligated to help,
Uh-huh.
even if they're not in a position to do so.
So it's about finding that balance between being open and honest about your financial situation,
Right.
while also being mindful of the potential impact of those conversations on others.
Precisely. The real message here is to focus on building genuine connections with people, valuing them for who they are, not what they possess. It's about keeping those relationships grounded in shared values and experiences,
Right.
not material wealth.
It's about recognizing that true wealth lies in those authentic connections,
Yes,
not in the size of your bank account.
absolutely.
Have you ever had an experience where money became a source of tension in a relationship? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective.
The source then shifts into a more introspective realm,
Okay.
suggesting we guard your vulnerabilities.
This one feels particularly important in today's world, where we're often encouraged to be overly transparent and share every aspect of our lives online.
Right.
But the truth is, not everyone deserves access to our deepest fears and insecurities.
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
While vulnerability can be a powerful tool for connection,
Right.
it's also a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
It's important to be discerning about who we choose to open up to, recognizing that not everyone will handle our vulnerability with care and respect.
There are people who might exploit that vulnerability intentionally or unintentionally,
Yeah.
causing harm or using it against us in some way.
Exactly. It's not about building walls around ourselves and becoming completely closed off,
Right.
but rather about choosing our confidants wisely, finding those safe spaces where we can be truly authentic without fear of judgment or repercussions.
It's about recognizing that sharing our vulnerabilities should be a gift freely given,
Yeah,
not something that's taken or demanded from us.
I agree.
It's about building strong, supportive relationships where vulnerability is met with empathy and understanding.
Now, this next one is where it gets really interesting.
I'm intrigued. What's next on the list?
The source advises us to honor the silence of the soul.
Okay, that sounds deep. What exactly does that mean?
This speaks to the deeply personal nature of spirituality and our individual journeys of faith or personal meaning. It's a reminder that these experiences are often difficult to articulate, and sharing them with those who don't share our worldview can lead to misunderstanding, judgment, or even ridicule.
So it's about respecting that inner sanctum,
Yeah.
that sacred space where we connect with something bigger than ourselves without feeling the need to explain or defend it to others.
Precisely. It's not about hiding our beliefs or being ashamed of them,
Right.
but rather about recognizing that some things are best explored and understood on our own terms,
Yeah.
without the need for external validation or approval.
It's about trusting our intuition and honoring our own unique path,
Exactly.
even if it doesn't align with the mainstream or the expectations of others.
Right.
Have you ever felt misunderstood when trying to share something deeply personal about your beliefs or your spiritual experiences?
That's a good question.
Tell us about it in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And finally, the source emphasizes the importance of leaving the past behind, urging us to learn from our mistakes without letting them define us.
It's about acknowledging that we all make mistakes. Those experiences are a natural part of life, but that we don't have to carry them around like baggage forever.
Exactly. It's about reframing those past experiences,
Yeah.
seeing them as stepping stones on our path to growth,
Right.
rather than roadblocks that hold us back.
It's about learning those lessons, integrating that wisdom, and then moving forward with self-compassion,
Yes.
accepting our imperfections and focusing on the present moment
Yeah.
rather than dwelling on what's already happened.
Precisely. It's about embracing the present, and moving forward with a sense of hope and possibility,
Mm.
knowing that we're constantly evolving and that every day is a chance for a fresh start.
It's like that quote by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
That's a powerful quote, and it really speaks to the essence of these 7 secrets. They're all about cultivating a way of being in the world that is mindful, intentional, and ultimately focused on creating positive connections and experiences.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious to explore how these seemingly simple ideas connect to broader philosophical concepts. Like, where else have we heard this emphasis on silence and discretion before?
Well, one immediate connection is to the ancient philosophy of Stoicism.
Ah, the Stoics famous for their resilience and emotional control, right?
Yes.
Like that idea of focusing on what you can control your own thoughts and actions,
Yeah.
rather than getting caught up in external circumstances.
Exactly. Stoicism emphasizes inner peace and virtue,
Right.
achieved in part through managing our reactions to external events. And a key aspect of that is recognizing the power of our own thoughts and words.
Mm.
It's about choosing carefully what we allow into our minds and what we express outward,
Right.
recognizing that our thoughts and words have a direct impact on our emotional state and overall well-being.
So it's not about suppressing emotions or pretending that challenges don't exist,
Right.
but rather about approaching them with a sense of clarity and intention, choosing how we respond rather than simply reacting impulsively.
Precisely. And this aligns perfectly with the source's advice on guarding our vulnerabilities and not dwelling on past mistakes.
Yeah.
It's about taking responsibility for our inner state, recognizing that we have the power to choose how we perceive and respond to the world around us.
It's about cultivating that inner strength and resilience
Yeah.
that allows us to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and equanimity.
Another interesting parallel is the concept of mindfulness, which has gained immense popularity in recent years.
Mindfulness, that's all about being present in the moment, right?
Yes.
Like really paying attention to our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment, just observing them as they arise and pass.
Yes. And a core aspect of mindfulness is cultivating a non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts and feelings.
Right.
This ties directly into the idea of honoring the silence of the soul.
Yeah.
Creating that inner space for reflection and connection without the noise of external opinions or expectations.
It's about recognizing that our thoughts are not facts. They're just thoughts.
Yes.
And we have the power to choose which thoughts we engage with, which thoughts we allow to shape our perceptions and actions.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that inner observer, that wise and compassionate part of ourselves that can witness our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
Right.
It's about creating that space for stillness and clarity amidst the chaos of everyday life.
And this emphasis on mindful introspection also connects to the advice on unspoken dreams.
Absolutely. By cultivating a practice of mindfulness, we create space to truly understand our aspirations, to connect with the deeper motivations behind our goals. It's not just about achieving something externally, but also about the internal transformation that happens along the way.
So it's about aligning our actions with our values, making sure our pursuits are truly in service of our own growth and well-being, and not just driven by external pressures or a desire for validation.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives, and that often starts with that inner journey of self-discovery and reflection.
Yeah.
And that internal clarity can then guide how and when we choose to share our dreams with others.
I'm also curious to see what modern science has to say about these ideas.
Okay.
We've got the ancient wisdom, but does any of this actually hold up under the scrutiny of scientific research?
Well, there's a fascinating body of research on the impact of social comparison, particularly in the age of social media.
Yes, the constant temptation to measure ourselves against others, to compare our lives, our achievements, our possessions. It's so easy to get caught up in that game, especially when we're constantly bombarded with curated versions of other people's lives online.
Exactly. And studies have shown that upward social comparison, that is comparing ourselves to those who seem better off, can lead to feelings of envy, inadequacy, and even decreased motivation. It can create a sense of scarcity and lack rather than abundance and gratitude.
So the source's advice on not boasting about wealth or achievements is actually backed by science.
It seems so.
It's not about hiding our successes or pretending that we haven't achieved anything, but rather about being mindful of how we share those successes.
Right.
And recognizing that those comparisons are often based on incomplete or distorted information.
Precisely. It's about celebrating our own achievements without feeling the need to prove ourselves to others or seek external validation.
Hmm.
It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own unique journey and that comparison is ultimately a thief of joy.
It's about focusing on our own path, celebrating our own successes, and being grateful for what we have, rather than getting caught in the trap of keeping up with the Joneses.
There's also research on the importance of selective self-disclosure,
Okay.
which ties directly into the idea of guarding our vulnerabilities.
Self-disclosure, that's about how much we choose to reveal about ourselves to others. Like finding that balance between being authentic and also protecting our hearts.
Exactly. And studies have shown that disclosing too much too soon can actually damage relationships.
Really? Why is that? I would think that being open and vulnerable would create a stronger bond, a sense of intimacy and trust.
It can, but it depends on the context and the timing.
Yeah.
If we disclose too much too soon, it can create an imbalance of trust and intimacy.
Right.
It can feel like one person is oversharing while the other feels pressured to reciprocate,
Right.
even if they're not ready or comfortable doing so.
Like it's almost like a violation of boundaries.
Yeah.
Sense of being overwhelmed or invaded by the other person's emotional intensity.
Precisely. And this can lead to feelings of discomfort, vulnerability, and even resentment.
Wow.
It's about recognizing that building trust and intimacy is a gradual process, a dance between revealing and concealing, and that it takes time and shared experiences to create that safe space where vulnerability can be truly shared and received.
So the source's advice on guarding our vulnerabilities is about pacing ourselves.
Yes.
Building trust gradually and choosing our confidants wisely.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of the emotional dynamics in our relationships, making sure there's a sense of reciprocity and safety,
Right.
and recognizing that sharing our deepest selves should be a choice, not an obligation.
And this ties into the source's advice on family matters. Keeping those private conversations within the family unit.
Yeah.
Respecting those boundaries. And recognizing that sometimes the best support comes from those who are closest to us.
Now let's shift our focus to the practical side of things.
Okay.
We've explored the philosophy, the psychology now. How do we actually apply these ideas in our everyday lives?
Okay. So we've got all these great concepts,
Yeah.
but how do we translate them into actionable steps? How do we actually start living these secrets?
Well, one simple but powerful practice is to become more aware of our self-talk.
Okay.
That constant stream of thoughts running through our heads, the internal dialogue that often shapes our perceptions and influences our actions.
Self-talk, that's the voice in our heads that's constantly commenting on our experiences, judging our performance, and often being our own harshest critic, right?
Exactly. And often that self-talk can be quite negative and self-critical.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to be much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend or loved one.
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely guilty of that. Like that inner voice is always pointing out my flaws, magnifying my mistakes, and reminding me of all the ways I'm not good enough. It can be exhausting.
And that negativity can seep into our interactions with others. If we're constantly putting ourselves down, it might show up in how we talk about our achievements or even our vulnerabilities.
Like we might downplay our successes or shy away from sharing our true selves
Yeah,
because we're afraid of being judged or rejected.
precisely. So the first step is to cultivate a more compassionate inner voice.
To treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a dear friend.
Yeah.
To recognize that we're all works in progress, that we're all doing the best we can with the resources we have.
Exactly. And this ties into the source's advice on leaving past mistakes behind. It's about forgiving ourselves for those missteps, recognizing that we're all human
Right.
and that making mistakes is an inevitable part of the learning process.
It's about recognizing that those mistakes don't define us.
Yeah.
They don't diminish our worth.
Right.
And that we can choose to learn from them and move forward without carrying that burden of shame or guilt.
And this shift in self-talk can then influence how we choose to share our experiences with others. If we're more comfortable with our own imperfections, we might be less inclined to boast or seek validation.
Yeah.
We might be more willing to be authentic and vulnerable because we're no longer afraid of being judged for who we truly are.
That makes so much sense. It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. If we're constantly depleting our own energy with negative self-talk, we won't have anything left to give to others, and our relationships will suffer as a result.
Another practical tip is to be more intentional about our social media use. It can be a powerful tool for connection, but it can also fuel the comparison game and the pressure to present a perfect image.
Ah, yes, the double-edged sword of social media.
Yeah.
It can be great for staying connected with friends and family,
Yeah.
for sharing ideas and inspiration. But it can also be a breeding ground for insecurity, envy, and that feeling of never being good enough.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the curated versions of other people's lives, to compare ourselves to those seemingly perfect images
Right.
and feel like we're falling short.
So how do we navigate that? How do we use social media in a way that supports our well-being
Right.
rather than undermines it?
One strategy is to curate our feeds more carefully,
Okay.
following accounts that inspire and uplift us, rather than those that trigger feelings of envy or inadequacy.
Yeah.
It's about choosing to fill our minds with positive and uplifting content rather than negativity and comparison.
It's like creating a mental diet, being mindful of what we're consuming and how it's impacting our emotional state. Just like we choose to nourish our bodies with healthy food,
Exactly.
we can choose to nourish our minds with positive and uplifting content.
Another tip is to be more deliberate about what we choose to share. Instead of just posting impulsively,
Yeah.
take a moment to consider our motivations.
Are we seeking validation, attention,
Yeah.
or are we genuinely trying to connect with others on a deeper level to share something meaningful or to inspire and uplift those around us?
Exactly. It's about being authentic, sharing our experiences in a way that feels true to ourselves,
Right.
while also respecting the boundaries of others. It's about using social media as a tool for connection and positive expression,
Yeah.
rather than a platform for self-promotion or seeking external approval.
It's about remembering that social media is just a highlight reel. It's not real life.
Right.
And that comparison is a trap that keeps us from appreciating the beauty and uniqueness of our own journey. What about you? Have you ever had an experience where social media negatively impacted your well-being? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this.
Now let's talk about how to cultivate more meaningful conversations in our daily lives. How do we move beyond the superficial small talk and really connect with others on a deeper level?
Okay, so we're moving from the online world back to face-to-face interactions. How do we create those heart-to-heart connections, those moments of shared understanding and empathy?
A key principle here is active listening, really being present,
Yeah.
giving our full attention to the person speaking and demonstrating that we're truly interested in what they have to say.
It's about putting aside our own thoughts and judgments, our own agendas and distractions, and really focusing on the other person,
Yeah.
trying to see the world through their eyes and understand their perspective.
Exactly. And this means putting aside our own thoughts and judgments, truly trying to understand the other person's perspective without interrupting,
Right.
offering unsolicited advice, or trying to steer the conversation in a particular direction.
It's about creating a safe space for open and honest dialogue,
Yes.
where the other person feels heard, seen, and understood.
And this ties into the source's advice on guarding our vulnerabilities.
Right.
When we feel truly listened to, when we feel that sense of safety and respect, we're more likely to feel comfortable sharing our deeper selves.
It's like creating a container for intimacy and vulnerability,
Yeah.
a space where we can let down our guards and be our true selves without fear of judgment or rejection.
Another important aspect of meaningful conversations is asking thoughtful questions. Not just surface-level small talk,
Okay.
but questions that invite deeper reflection and sharing.
Like instead of just asking, how are you? And getting the automatic, fine, how are you?
Right.
We might ask, what's been on your mind lately? Or what's bringing you joy these days?
Exactly. It's about showing genuine interest in the other person's experiences, inviting them to share their thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
and creating a space for deeper connection.
It's about moving beyond the transactional and into the relational, recognizing that true connection happens when we're willing to be present, vulnerable, and curious about the other person's inner world.
And this can lead to more authentic connections, conversations that go beyond the superficial and touch on those deeper longings for connection, meaning, and purpose that we all share.
It's about creating those moments of shared understanding and empathy that make life richer, more meaningful, and more fulfilling. Now, I'm wondering about those situations where we encounter people who don't necessarily share this philosophy of silence and discretion.
Yeah.
Like, what about those people who are constantly oversharing, gossiping, or trying to pry into our personal lives?
Absolutely. Let's be real, not everyone is going to be on board with this approach. And in those situations, it's important to set clear boundaries to protect our own energy and well-being.
So how do we do that? How do we politely but firmly redirect the conversation if it starts to veer into uncomfortable territory?
It might involve simply changing the subject or gently stating that you'd prefer not to discuss certain topics.
Like if someone starts gossiping about a mutual friend,
Yeah,
we might say, I'm not comfortable discussing that. Let's talk about something else.
right.
Or if someone starts asking intrusive questions about our personal lives,
Mm-hmm.
we might say, that's a bit too personal for me. I'd rather not share.
Exactly. It's about being direct but respectful, assertive but not aggressive.
Right.
It's about honoring our own needs and limits,
Yeah.
while also acknowledging the other person's right to have their own perspective.
And sometimes it might even mean distancing ourselves from those people.
Mm-hmm.
If they consistently disregard our boundaries or if their energy feels draining or toxic.
Another strategy is to use humor to deflect unwanted questions or comments.
Ah, yes, the power of humor to diffuse a tense situation or deflect an intrusive question.
Exactly. A well-placed joke can sometimes signal that you're not taking yourself too seriously,
Right.
that you're not playing into the drama, and that you're not willing to engage in that level of negativity or
Yeah.
gossip.
It's about finding a lighthearted way to maintain your boundaries without creating conflict or making the other person feel defensive.
Right.
It's about recognizing that sometimes the best response is no response at all.
Now let's talk about the role of silence itself in our daily lives. We've been talking about the power of discretion, of choosing our words carefully, but what about those times when we choose to say nothing at all?
Yes, the source emphasized the power of silence, and we've been dancing around it throughout this conversation.
Mm.
But what exactly is it about silence that's so powerful? What gift does it bring us?
Silence can be incredibly powerful both internally and in our interactions with others. It can be a source of peace, of clarity, of deeper understanding, and even creativity.
Internally, I've noticed that when I create space for silence,
Yeah.
when I quiet the chatter of my mind,
Mm-hmm.
it's like all these insights and ideas start to bubble up to the surface.
Mm.
Like that space allows for a different kind of thinking,
Right.
a more intuitive and creative way of processing information.
Exactly. Internally, silence allows us to connect with our intuition, to process our thoughts and feelings without distraction,
Right.
and to access a deeper level of wisdom and creativity that's often drowned out by the noise of our busy minds.
It's like creating that mental space for reflection and renewal,
Yes.
allowing ourselves to just be without the pressure to do, think, or achieve.
And in our interactions with others, silence can convey empathy, respect, and a willingness to truly listen.
Yeah.
It's about holding space for the other person, allowing them to fully express themselves without interruption,
Right.
and demonstrating that we're truly present and engaged in the conversation.
It's like that saying, silence is golden. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply be present in silence,
I love that.
to listen with our hearts as well as our ears, and to allow the other person to feel heard and understood.
Silence can also be a powerful tool for setting boundaries,
Yeah.
particularly when dealing with those who are overbearing, disrespectful, or trying to manipulate or control us.
Like if someone is pushing us to share something we're not comfortable with,
Yeah.
simply remaining silent can send a clear message that we're not willing to engage in that conversation or that we're not going to be swayed by their tactics.
Exactly. It's a non-confrontational way to assert our own limits, to protect our energy, and to communicate that we're not going to be bullied or manipulated.
So it's not just about what we say, but also about when we choose to say nothing at all.
Right.
It's about recognizing that silence can be a powerful form of communication in its own right,
Yeah.
conveying strength, wisdom, and a deep sense of self-respect.
Precisely. And this mastery of silence is a skill that takes practice.
But it can be incredibly rewarding.
It's about finding that balance between expressing ourselves authentically and honoring the power of the unspoken, recognizing that sometimes the most powerful messages are those that are conveyed without words.
Now let's consider how these ideas might apply to different areas of our lives.
Okay.
We've been talking about this in a general sense, but how does this play out in specific contexts?
Okay, so we've got the theory now. Let's get practical.
Yeah.
How does this philosophy of silence and discretion show up in the workplace,
Hmm.
in our personal relationships, in our creative pursuits, and even in the broader context of society? Let's consider the challenge of finding silence in a world
Yeah.
that's constantly demanding our attention.
Right.
You know, we're bombarded with information stimulation and the pressure to be constantly connected. It can be hard to find even a few moments of peace and quiet.
It's true. We live in a world of 247 news cycles, social media notifications,
Right.
and the expectation that we're always available and responsive. It's no wonder so many people feel overwhelmed and exhausted.
Yeah.
So how do we create space for silence in the midst of all this noise?
Right.
How do we resist the pull of constant stimulation
Yeah.
and reconnect with that inner stillness?
It's about being intentional, making a conscious effort to disconnect from the noise
Mhm.
and create space for stillness,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
So it's not about becoming a hermit or living in a silent retreat,
Right.
but rather about finding those moments of respite throughout the day,
Yeah,
those pockets of quiet where we can recharge and reconnect with ourselves.
exactly. And this might involve simple practices like meditation,
Okay.
spending time in nature,
Yeah.
or even just taking a few minutes each day to sit in silence and breathe deeply.
It's about finding those rituals that work for us, that help us to slow down, to tune out the external noise, and to reconnect with our inner peace and stillness.
And it's important to remember that silence doesn't have to be absolute. You don't need to seek out complete sensory deprivation to experience the benefits of silence.
Right. It's not about living in a soundproof booth.
Exactly.
It's about finding those moments of quiet
Yeah.
amidst the chaos, those pockets of stillness, where we can simply be without the pressure to do, think, or achieve.
Exactly. It's about cultivating an awareness of silence.
Okay.
Noticing those moments when it naturally arises in our lives, like that quiet pause between breaths,
Yeah.
the stillness of a winter morning,
Yeah.
or that peaceful feeling you get when you're walking in nature and appreciating the gifts that those moments bring.
It's about recognizing that silence is not emptiness. It's a space filled with potential, with creativity, with wisdom, with healing, and with a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us.
Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the power of silence?
Yeah.
Have you found ways to incorporate it into your own life?
Mm.
Share your experiences and insights in the comments below.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to the deep dive for more explorations into the fascinating world of ideas.
This has been such a rich and insightful conversation. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this topic, but it's definitely given me a lot to think about,
Yeah,
both in terms of my own life and in terms of how we interact with the world around us.
me too. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful things are those that are left unsaid,
Yeah.
that true wisdom often lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent,
Mm-hmm.
and that the space between the words can be just as meaningful as the words themselves.
It's about finding that balance between expressing ourselves authentically and honoring the power of the unspoken. Recognizing that sometimes the greatest wisdom lies in simply being present,
Yeah.
in listening deeply,
Mm-hmm.
and in allowing the silence to speak for itself.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the power of silence. Until next time.